Thank you for staying with Citizen Extra. We're looking at news shaping the day. The Electoral Commission has fired Procurement Director Lawi Aura, accusing him of incompetence that made operations untenable ahead of the August general election. Although the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission released the details of his sacking last Tuesday morning, it is understood that Mr. Aura was actually fired on the 29th of May. We'll be getting more details on this very shortly, but away from that, we're looking at the possible internal strife within the IEBC and the repercussions of that on the August polls, the state of preparedness by this electoral body. With us in studio is IEBC Commissioner Roslyn Akombe. We're also joined by Dr. Sam Kamau, who is a political analyst, and David Ostianyi, who is a governance analyst. Thank you very much for being with us, lady and gentlemen. I'll start with the lady on the state of preparedness, looking at the dismissal of this very high-ranking officials of the IEBC. What does that indicate as regards the level of preparedness only about 60 days to the polls?
Lillian, thank you very much. You know, it is unfortunate that we have been forced to make those very difficult decisions, because our goal at the IEBC is to ensure that we are fully ready for the elections that we're just having in 2 months' time. And our observation in the last 4 months that we've been in office is that the key departments that are supposed to be pivotal for the organization of the elections have let us down in some ways. The ICT department, and you saw our action regarding the Directorate of ICT and also procurement. You have seen on numerous occasions we have been subject of legal suits in court. You have seen the very damning report that was issued by the Procurement Authority, PPDA, that actually propelled us to take this action, whereby the conclusion of that report, or the judgment from the authority, was that the process for the procurement of the ballot papers was so flawed that it could not be perceived as having been consistent with the Constitution and also the laws of the country. So when you are faced with a situation like that, you have no choice but to ask people to step aside and to allow those who are in the directorates, who have the capacity to do the work, to continue to do so. I need to stress that this is an action of individuals within the two directorates. This does not speak about the incapacity of the entire two directorates. We have every confidence that the staff that we have, the remaining staff we have in the two directorates, will help us and are already working with us in ensuring that we move forward very quickly with the procurement of the ballot papers, but also that we move very quickly with the testing of the technology that we'll be using in the elections. And as you know, by law, we are required to test that technology on the 9th of June, and that is proceeding well using the staff that exists.
And do you have sufficient time then to replace these individuals? When we look at the case of the IEBC ICT Director James Mohati, from a statement from the IEBC, we understand that he refused to cooperate in an ongoing audit of the 19.74 million people voter register. When we look at the case of Mr. Aura, the Commission noted with concern the growing anxiety with the ballot procurement, in particular the bidding process. For the voter, what this does, the fact that you as the IEBC have been very honest, and you've communicated why, of course, these dismissals were necessary, what this does to the voter as regards faith in your institution.
Lillian, I believe that this actually shows the transparency with which the IEBC is operating. That when we are taking action against our staff who are hindering us from proceeding with our work, that we are doing it in a transparent way, and that we are communicating to the Kenyan people, the Kenyan voter, of what we are doing. What I think is very important to stress is that I've said in this media before, I've been here before saying that we have a lot of, my ability to move forward and prepare the elections is because of the capacity that we have within our staff. We have very professional staff. We have people who have passion for the work that they do, who have a very good understanding of how to run elections. And that is why we are seeing the ICT moving forward, even when one director has been asked to go on compulsory leave, because the directorate has very competent staff. We have an acting director, Chris, who's doing a fantastic job right now, and we have every confidence that the remaining staff are able to do the work. We have confidence in the remaining staff in the procurement department, and we're already seeing them moving quickly towards looking back and from the mistakes that were made on the procurement of the ballot papers and advising us on the best way to move forward. I think what I would urge my Kenyan compatriots is to have confidence that actually when you see us take these actions, it shows that we are confident in the path that we are taking. We are confident enough to be able to take decisions and say, if these two directors are going to make us, are the ones who are going to come in between us being able to deliver efficient, free and fair elections, then we'll ask them to step aside. And that is really what we are doing, and that's what we'll urge the Kenyan people to see, that this is not an issue of a weakness within the institution, but it's actually a strength in the institution, that we can be able to ask people to step aside and have confidence that we are building institutions that will still be able to move forward and deliver free and fair elections to the Kenyan people.
Dr. Kamal, your thoughts on the same, these high-level dismissals, the fact that the commissioners and the secretariat arguably seem to be at loggerheads, and how this is likely to impact the August polls?
Well, Lillian, I may want to start by commending IEBC for engaging more and communicating more with the public and giving assurances about the processes they are involved in. But I think I'm sure the new team is aware of the task that is ahead of them, and they also have to understand that they took office at a time where public confidence in the IEBC was almost depleted, arising of course out of the 2013, the disputes of the 2013 elections. But having said that, I think they have been quick to consistently give assurances and always engaging with the public through the media about their preparedness of this process. But I think they would understand if the public is still anxious if some critical decisions have not been concluded, for example, the issue of the ballot papers tendering process. And I think you remember in 2013, one of the issues that happened is that on the material day when equipment started failing, of course IBC was still communicating at that time and giving assurances that they were ready, and therefore lessons from that time are still keeping the public a bit anxious, and of course the political players, in terms of are these people really ready. And I think as we saw with the nominations, the political party nominations, I think the different bodies, that is the elections board within the different political parties, they gave assurances prior to the start of the exercise, and then the whole thing ended up being described as shambolic. So the assurances are good, but we hope that enough is being done internally to make sure that even despite the hiccups, these issues are being addressed and will not experience surprises come the material day.
And David, from your assessment of all of this, do you think there's an underlying issue? Is this a manifestation of possible cracks within the IEBC?
Well, Lillian, I must say, I have engaged with government and government procedures long enough to be able to tell that when there are such interesting intrigues, then possibly there are intrigues of interests. I would want to ask Rosalind, probably, and I mean, I'm very glad if the step taken is to try and redeem the process and to reassure the Kenyans that this will be a free, fair, transparent and just election, which is what we all want. However, there seems to be a problem between the Commission and the Secretariat, in my estimation, because even today, reading through Lawi Aura's firing, you are able to decipher that it is an action by the chairman. I don't seem to see the CEO involved in this. He seems to be away for whatever reason, because then they would make a joint statement. But I'm also privy to information, and we all are because it was all out here, that these two directors who've been fired were just recently appointed. Okay, so the director of ICT was a recent appointee, and the director of procurement came on board not too long ago. Their firing, therefore, seems to me quite questionable. Could the commissioners be fighting? Is there another chicken gate cooking? Could it be a problem of kickbacks? Is someone standing on the way of the other? What's really going on? And you know, back in my previous life, I was a journalist, and I knew that there is their side, our side, and the truth. That third eye, we need to delve in a little deeper and find out really what is going on. And should there be a huge difference or fallout between the commission, who I want you to note are political appointees? Should there be a fallout between the commission and the secretariat, then we are headed for a headwind.
Commissioner Roslyn, is there an issue between the commissioners and the secretariat, as David is alluding to?
Let me address David's issues of whether there is a chicken gate in the works and whether we are asking the directors to step aside because of bribes or anything like that. Let me make it very clear to the Kenyan people that we are persons of integrity at the Commission, that none of us as commissioners has been engaged in any practice that is anywhere close to chicken gate. We are not involved in any acts of corruption. We are not engaged in any acts of fighting over tenders. Our goal is to ensure that there are ballot papers available for the elections. That is our goal. That is our responsibility, and that is what the Kenyan people expect us to do. And if they are our staff who are involved in processes that are delaying that whole procedure, then we have to take action. Let me remind you again, when we came into office, we found, a month actually after we had come into office, we had a ruling from Justice Odunga on the ballot papers. The ruling asked us to come up and re-advertise the tender. We instructed that that tender be re-advertised. Why is it that it is June and we still do not have ballot papers? So when the commission comes to act and ask these tough questions, then the tenderers out there, those who are doing the vendor wars, come out and say the commissioners must be involved in something. Absolutely not. Our goal is to ensure that we have the ballot papers on time, that we do not miss the timelines that we have that are very close. There is no fight between us and the Secretariat in that way. There are challenges, obviously, in many organizations, in many institutions. Those are normal challenges that you already have. But we have a very good relationship with our staff. I've been at Bomas right now a few minutes ago, where we were receiving the returns from all our field officers, the 290 plus the 47 for the county, and they all appreciate the role that the commissioners are doing, that the commission is doing. They appreciate the fact that the commission is able to take action where there are bottlenecks that are there. And obviously, when we take action, there are people who are not going to be happy with it. There are people in institutions who will not be happy when change is coming. There are people in institutions who will always question changes that are being put in institutions by people who have come, who are perceived to be new. So those are normal challenges that you'll find in a place. But I want to assure Kenyans that this is not an issue in which staff are being asked to step aside so that the commissioners can plunder and take the loot from the Kenyan taxpayer. That is absolutely not the case.
And you mentioned, delays on the advertising of tenders. Why isn't action being taken on the person who ordinarily should oversee the smooth advertising of these tenders?
In this particular case, we have taken action on the person who actually is directly accountable for that. And the person directly accountable for that in our structure is the Director of Procurement. We followed up and saw the actions that the CEO had taken, and as accounting officer, we are satisfied with the actions that the CEO had taken on his part, and what we are questioning is really the process that was then being handled under the leadership of the Director of Procurement.
Dr. Kamau, looking at the fact that the IEBC suspended the procurement of ballots, is still handling appeals as we speak. Of course, we know that August is fast beckoning. Do you think that there is sufficient time to see all of this come to completion, to ensure that ballot papers are in place at the right time, and indeed to ensure that the current appeals have been handled as well before the polls?
Well, I don't want to exactly say whether there is sufficient time because they don't have a choice. We must have an election on 8th of August and everything that is required to be done has to be done. In fact, I'm seeking assurance from the commissioner here to tell us about the, of course, what they intend to do to make sure that the ballot papers are available on that particular day. But I think the other issues, for example, the hearing of the disputes arising from the nomination process, these are things that are well defined in law, and I think despite the challenges, of course, of some of the timelines being moved by the courts, they have assured us that they are still on course, and we expect that these legal timelines will be adhered to, and all these matters will be concluded, and then the names of the candidates will be gazetted and will be able to have the election. Of course, like I said, we still have our concerns or anxiety that perhaps because of these constant delays and the moving or the shifting of goalposts and certain specific timelines, we are still concerned whether these will create confusion, and the anxiety will increase to a process where some candidates or some players might feel that this was not a free and fair election, partly because IBC was not adequately prepared. And that is why we are saying the constant assurances coming from the Commission, they are good and they are helpful, but they should not mask from what is happening behind the scenes to make sure that everybody is held responsible and everybody does what they are supposed to do, because we do not want a repeat of what happened in 2013 where the winners or the losers would feel that this was not a fair process. And I think that is where my concern would mostly be directed. But as to whether there is sufficient time, I believe there is enough time to address all these issues that are coming up to make sure that we have a free and a credible process.
David, I want to just read a couple of comments that are coming out, that are coming in regarding this conversation. Somebody here is saying it might turn out that this officer being sacked was standing in the way of the Commission towards corrupting the IBC systems. It doesn't make sense to see two individuals be laid off. It's very likely that a bunch of officers may gang up or conspire to do evil at that place of work. Somebody here is saying, Mr. Chebukati, IEBC chairman, Kenyans will only appreciate and develop trust in the Commission after you hold and carry out a transparent, free and fair election that we are about to express our constitutional rights on the 8th of August 2017. For the electorate, I had put this to Commissioner Roslyn earlier, for the electorate, looking at issues with procurement process, looking at very high-ranking directors being laid off, persons that handle ICT and indeed procurement, what would you say as regards the faith of the electorate in this independent body?
I bet this leaves the electorate with a lot of questions, and that is why, you know, I threw the gauntlet at Roslyn, because 60 days to go, you know, you must have the buy-in of all the stakeholders, which in this case is a political class in the country. Do you have sufficient time? Are they going to agree finally with what, you know, whichever decision or whichever company you will decide to give or to award the tender? Is there enough time to go through the tendering process, or are we still going to say we are going to fetch one company and decide this is the company? And in my opinion, therefore, it leaves IEBC in quite a delicate place. But as Sam has rightly said, we hope they make it. It doesn't seem to me as though 2 months is enough to have to go through all these things. But I really hope that they're able to do that, so that the electorate can once more believe in that commission. Because as it seems right now, you know, Roslyn can proceed to say, oh, this is it, this can't be the truth, this is it. But perception is everything in such matters. Not everyone has a sophisticated understanding of what's going on. What did the PPOA say? Perception. When we watch you doing your press statements, when we read through the lines of what's going on, when we see key decisions made without some of the people who should be making them being present, then the perception out there is that the Commission and the Secretariat are at loggerheads. Now, when that perception is there, questions arise. Some may be valid, others may be invalid, but at the end of the day, all they seek to do is to reassure the electorate that this process will be free, fair, and transparent.
And Commissioner Roslyn, you know, the firing of your procurement boss, you know, was made after the board found that the 2.5 billion tender for supply and delivery of ballot papers for the August elections was incurably flawed, I believe. Are there officials within the IEBC that are likely to have been compromised? Is this the beginning of a possible crackdown to weed out any corrupt individuals or officials that you may have within the system that could compromise the August polls?
Thank you, Lillian. Let me clarify one issue, that at every meeting in which we have had a discussion of our staff, our CEO sits in. It cannot be a complete meeting legally if our CEO is not part of it, and the CEO is the one who has had to write the letters to both directors. So I just want to clarify that the CEO, our CEO, Ezra Chiloba, has been a participant in all our meetings, in all our discussions, and has been the one to communicate to the staff as required by law. But in terms of communication to the media, that is the responsibility of the chairman. He is the official spokesperson of the organization, and there is no requirement for him to have to co-sign press statements with Ezra Chiloba, our very competent CEO. That is not a requirement in law, and you have seen on many other communications, it will either come from Chebukati himself or it will come from Limo, who is our communications manager. So that is how we communicate. It's either through Chebukati in press releases, or it's through Limo. So there is no, you have not seen us issue press releases that are co-signed by either the CEO and the chair. That is not how we that's not how we work. But I hear the sentiments in terms of the anxiety of the Kenyan people, in terms of where we are as we prepare for the elections, and whether the delays in procurement will have an impact on the elections. I want to remind you of the situation we were a few months ago with the technology, where we had come out to the Kenyans and we said we had a requirement to deliver the equipment as required by the law by April 9th. And we had to make tough decisions during that time. We had very many companies engaged in vendor wars. But we had to make a decision for the sake of the country, and we took that decision, and we were able to deliver the technology on time as required by the law. We have been able to use that technology for purposes of verification of voters. We have seen that the technology has its strengths. We have been able to see where the deficiencies are and fix the deficiencies within the 1 month that we have, and we are ready to test the entire technology, including the transmission of results within the stipulated timeline in law. So really what I want to emphasize here is that we're doing our best as a commission to be able to deliver. There are challenges, just like challenges you'll find in many other organizations, but more challenges here because this is a political, in the end there are various political actors, there are various political interests from all our stakeholders. But our role is really to ensure that we meet our timelines, we move forward. We will be coming out to the nation in a short while to announce the decision on the ballot papers. I want to assure the Kenyan people that we will have ballot papers.
Well, so what is the way forward as regards the procurement of ballot papers now?
We will be, Lillian will be coming back, Chairman Chebukati has an intention to speak to the country. Once we have finalized that process in the next few days, he'll announce to the country how we are proceeding with that one.
And as we close the conversation, Dr. Kamal, questions are emerging on how this process ideally should be done, the tendering process, whether direct tendering is allowed in the procurement law in special circumstances, how essentially this procedure should be carried out.
Well, Lillian, I am hesitant, of course, to keep bashing the IEBC. What I think is that their internal administrative actions and decisions should be left to the Commission without being overly politicized. I accept and acknowledge that there could be instances of undue influence or external influence from the different political players. But political parties and other political actors are justified in raising questions or expressing their frustration or suspicion whenever there is an issue that is happening that would raise questions. And I think it's upon IEBC in their communication structures to make sure that they keep engaging closely with the political parties and the different players who might feel aggrieved one way or the other. But in terms of the administrative actions and decisions that the Commission and the Secretariat wants to make. We don't need to politicize that. All we need to know is that they are acting in good faith and they are doing this so that we can have a credible electoral process on 8th of August.
And David, your closing remarks on the same, on the tendering process?
Well, I think Commissioner Rosling appreciates that when some of these doubts and questions are raised, sorry, go back there, then it stems from the previous open conflict between the CEO and the chair during the reshuffling of their presiding, and returning officers. Be that as it may, we want to take our assurance that all is well. We can only but believe it will be well. I'm quite hesitant when it comes to this tendering process. I really hope we are not going to end up with a single sourcing kind of decision made, because then that will still raise too many questions. You want to have this done above board. You want to ensure that everyone believes that the process was as transparent as it gets, so that both sides are able to finally accept that, okay, if we win, we won. If we lose, we lost fairly and credibly. Otherwise, we want to wish them well. We really hope they are able to save this country. Tensions are high. All we look up to is IEBC to deliver a credible election.
Many thanks for your thoughts on this topic. We will be very shortly taking a break, but let's listen into the Court of Appeal, which is giving direction to the final presidential tally. Let's see what's happening there.
And declaration in the prescribed form of the final results from each polling station in a constituency for the election of member of National Assembly and members of County Assembly. Later on in my submission, I will submit on what the meaning of a declaration is. Secondly, Roman 2, the Commission shall appoint constituency returning officers to be responsible for Roman 2, collecting and announcing the results from each polling station in the constituency in respect of the election of the President, County Governor, Senator, and County Women Representatives to the National Assembly. I urge your lordships to note the provisions of section 39, 1A, Roman 2 in respect to the role of the constituency returning officer in a presidential election. My Lord, to conclude this thematic area, I have made the submission that Article 86 or Article 86 and Article 138(2) were not the correct articles by which the constitutionality of Section 39, 2 and 3 should have been determined.
Let me get understanding. Does Article 138 3C have any bearing on constitutionality? Because earlier on I had mentioned on the rest of the link on Article 138, some other part of Article 138. Does it have any bearing? You are saying 138(2) has no bearing, but is there any part of 138 which has any bearing?
My Lord, I have said, and I will say emphatically, that the election for the President of this Republic is completely governed by Article 138. And I will state in a moment what our understanding of what 138(2) does. But in the determination of the constitutionality of Section 39, 2 and 3, 138(2) has no role. And that is the submission which I then wish to come on to after I have dealt with the submission on why Article 86 has no role also in that constitutionality. My Lord, I submit that the purpose of Article 86 is to set out the constitutional principle that election results must be promptly announced. Now, my Lord, I am only counsel, so I cannot make that submission without authority. And I wish to rely, my Lord, on two authorities, the in support of that submission. My Lord, on page 278 of the record of appeal, the decision of the High Court that is the subject matter of this appeal, at line 23. The record of appeal, page 278. At line 23, my Lord, the landed judges of the High Court pronounced themselves as follows. Article 86B and C demand that there must be promptness in the announcement of election results. That is the finding by the High Court. And I submit that is the purpose of Article 86. The second authority I wish to rely on is the decision of the Supreme Court in the Joho matter. And I wish to refer your Lordship to volume 1 of the applicant's list of authorities, page 39 at paragraph 97 of that decision. Page 39 of volume 1 of the applicant's bundle of authorities, page 39. Paragraph 97, which commences on line 29. The Supreme Court pronounces itself as follows. The wording of Regulation 87.4a shows that the Gazette notice, in case of the presidential election, is specifically used to declare the winner of the presidential election. Indeed, this is within Article 138.10 that states that the chairman will declare within. Sorry, I think that is the wrong reference. It is 93 on the paragraph 93 on the next page. I'm sorry, page 38 on the previous page. It is paragraph 93, and 93 says as follows: that the Commission is further mandated by the Constitution, in brackets Article 86B and C, to ensure that the results from the polling stations are openly and accurately collated and promptly announced by the presiding officer at each polling station, and the same to be done by the returning officer. The purpose of Article 86. That decision of the Supreme Court was binding on the High Court, and I submit respectfully is binding on this Court.
Yeah, but this decision seems to be saying something else from a particular area, something else in another area. It talks about results being regulated as well, right? Announced and then and then somewhere says that further start and announce that.
This is the difficulty with the reliance on the Joho decision.
Yes.
The Joho decision deals with the election of a governor. And I had submitted previously that the election of the president is dealt with by a different constitutional standard. And that is why I had said earlier on in my submission that the finality envisaged by Joho and by Stephen Kariuki is achieved in the presidential petition once the duty placed on the IBC by Article 138.3c is fulfilled. That finality is not, and we agree that there must be finality, and we agree that there is finality. In all the other 5 elections, it happens differently from the presidential election. And because the other 5 elections are not the subject matter of this appeal, I will not dwell on it. Suffice it to say that in the presidential election, the finality in Joho and Stephen Kariuki is achieved once the duty in Article 138.3c is fulfilled. My Lord, there was a question from the bench as to whether Article 138.2 should apply to the consideration of the constitutionality of Section 39.2 and 3. My answer to that is no. Article 138.2 does not provide for the manner of declaration. of the presidential result. My Lord, the manner of declaration, and this is why in response to your Lordship's question I said that Article 138 is self-contained. The manner of declaration for the election to be conducted as directed by Article 138.2 is to be found in Article 138.3c as read with Article 138.10. Article 138.3.2 can be contrasted with the provisions of Article 180 Article 4 of the Constitution. Article 180 Article 4 a similar provision of the Constitution that directs the elections for government, and it provides as follows. If two or more candidates are nominated, an election shall be held in the county, and the candidate who receives the greatest number of votes shall be declared elected. That's a self-contained article. If you look at Article 180 Article 4, there is no need to look elsewhere for declaration. But because 138 is not self-contained, you need to look elsewhere. And it is our submission that the right place to look is not 86, which merely provides that election results should be announced promptly, but 138 and 138. My Lord, as I move on from that point, in respect of Article 138.3c, the comma at the end of the first sentence after the word polling station is important. And we submit that the meaning that comma introduces into that important provision of the Constitution is that the only act that takes place at the polling station is the counting. The only act that takes place at the polling station is the counting. In respect of the presidential election, there is a submission which perhaps I would like to respond to directly at this point by the 6th respondent in their written submission. Hello, the 6th respondent in their written submission at paragraph 47 in respect of the ability to verify or the responsibility to verify placed on the appellant state as follows. The power of verification of results under Article 138.3c, and which is shared corporately by the entire Commission. This power of verification and not alteration is shared by returning officers of each constituency in terms of Article 138.3.2. Again, I'm reading that important article. And who alone can A, tally, B, verify, and count of the polling stations, and C, declare the results. The only thing that takes place at the polling station is the counting. The verification, the tally, and the verification take place elsewhere. And they take place.
What happens? You just count and do what?
You count.
You just count and
you count and announce. Yes. The presidential result is made up of 40,000 components. The single building block of a presidential result is that polling station. And it is those that are there tallied. They are tallied by the constituency, and they are tallied by the IBC as directed by Article 138.3c.
If I have a question, if you are taking a very literal reading of that article 138.1c, it says, after counting the votes in the polling station, the IBC shall tally and verify the count and declare the result. There is no mention in that of any announcement. It just says you move from counting, you go to tallying and verifying. There is no announcing in 138.1c.
It will be
unless there is an amendment to the Constitution.
No, there hasn't been an amendment to the Constitution, my Lord, and
what do you make of that?
My Lord, it would be the kind of, if that were to be the position, it would be the kind of the election, it would be the kind of election that some of the respondents accuse the appellant of conducting. It is imperative that the results of an election be announced at every stage, at an earliest stage possible, and that is the polling station.
So you're trying to make a distinction between IBC as the chairman and commissioner and its employees?
Yes, there is a distinction, and there is a very clear distinction, and I will submit on that point later on. They are not the same.
It's not a question of principle and relationship.
It is not a question of principle or agent relationship, because even if they are agents, then there is no even if returning officers or presiding officers are agents, there is no evidence in the law or in any submissions before your lordships that has delegated the ability to tally, announce and declare to those agents.
When you look at 139(1)(c), look at it. After counting in the polling stations, the IBC shall tally, verify, etc. We are saying tally and verifying is done by the IEBC.
Yes, it is.
Over there.
Yes.
But the counting is not done by the IBC?
No, the counting is done, the election is conducted by the IBC.
That's fine. Right?
So my Lord, to say that anything in the election is not done by the IBC, I think would be admitting that it is an unconstitutional election. But the point I make, and the point that perhaps I wish your lordship to record, is that the counting is done at the polling station. And the verification and the tallying are then done as directed by the Constitution by the IBC.
The counting is done by the IBC at the polling station. Or who does that?
My Lord, I have taken you through the provisions of section 39(1)(a) of the Elections Act, and it seeks to operationalize the provisions of the Constitution. And the manner in which that is done is then set out in that provision of legislation. The polling station is under an officer known as a presiding officer. And the presiding officer is the only one actually who counts votes. Nobody else counts votes in an election. Like I said, after the presiding officer has counted votes and announced, because there is indeed a distinction in election law and practice between an announcement and a declaration. And we acknowledge that the presiding officer can only announce. Once he announces, then it is a cascading system of tally. And declarations then take place at the logical point where the election ends. If it is an MP, it is the constituency. If it is a governor, a senator, a women's representative to the National Assembly, it is the county. And if it is the president, then it is the national level.
Right. You're saying that the comma in C uses two levels. The counting level, the registration level. Is that what you're saying? That's why you're saying this comma is very important.
It is correct, because the duty placed directly on the IBC then happens after the comma.
Before the comma is at the polling station.
At the polling station.
But the effect of that argument is that what takes place before the comma is not by the IBC.
Article 188, I think, answers that.
Just going by your construction. Before your construction, the IBC comes after that.
The IBC has the ability under the Elections Act to appoint presiding officers who supervise the election at the polling station. And when I say it happens at the polling station, it happens at that level. I think the question that came from your brother was that
in fact, if in fact I'm thinking that supposing that article read, after the counting, not after counting, but after the counting of the votes in the polling station, comma, the IEBC I mean, would that not then fit perfectly in what you're saying? If the constituency, after the count,